The first thing you notice is not silence, but a kind of velvet hum, the way the world feels when it's just you, a fan in the corner, and the subtle ticking of the clock. You've already brushed your teeth, maybe checked your phone one too many times, and now you're here, hovering between the weight of the day and the drifting tide of night. There's something almost cinematic about this pause, the way your eyelids sag, but your mind keeps wandering, eager for a distraction that doesn't demand too much effort. That's where I step in, gently placing small facts into your imagination, like stones in a pocket, grounding you while lifting you at the same time. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you enjoy what I'm doing here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is right now. It's oddly fun to see night owls from New York mixing with dawn listeners in Tokyo or Paris. Now turn off the lights, turn on the fan for a soft background hum, and let's go on a nighttime journey together. The first stop is psychology's strange obsession with calm. Did you know your body is biologically wired to seek a state of rest? The parasympathetic nervous system, sometimes nicknamed the rest and digest mode, slides in after your day's chaos, lowering your heart rate, slowing your breathing, and even shifting blood flow back toward your gut so digestion feels easier. In a way, you could say your body is always rooting for you to chill out. If it had a voice, it might sound like that one friend who keeps saying, "Dude, just lie down, everything's fine." Here's another gentle truth. Yawning is contagious, not just because you see it, but because your brain mirrors the behavior. Mirror neurons, tiny psychological copycats, activate when you see someone yawn, stretch, or relax, nudging you to do the same. Evolutionarily, this might have helped groups synchronize rest. Today, it just makes boring meetings a little funnier. As you drift, notice how warmth and coziness trick your brain into safety. When you snuggle under a blanket, your hypothalamus registers the rising temperature and signals your body to release melatonin faster, which makes falling asleep smoother. No wonder humans basically invented the weighted blanket trend. Science just gave us permission to swaddle ourselves like oversized burritos. Another curious fact, studies show that the sound of slow, rhythmic breathing, even if it isn't yours, can calm your nervous system. That's why people often relax near sleeping partners or even pets. The body listens to the environment like background music, syncing with it. On a very real level, you're basically DJing your heartbeat right now just by choosing what sounds to surround yourself with. And here's something slightly odd, but oddly comforting. Psychologists have found that simply pretending to feel relaxed, sinking into the posture of calm, letting your shoulders drop, can make your brain believe it. Your mind often follows your body's cues more than the other way around. So if you're faking relaxation right now, joke's on you. It's already working, but scholars still debate how much of relaxation is universal and how much is cultural. Some argue that humans everywhere respond the same way to calming cues like soft sounds, darkness, and warmth. Others suggest that our sense of comfort is shaped by culture, like how some societies find rain deeply soothing while others associate it with gloom. The truth is probably a mix, but the argument continues, as academics love to argue about everything, even naps. Let's slip in a little-known edgy fact. In one study, researchers discovered that chewing gum for a while before bedtime can actually reduce stress hormones and slightly improve mood. Picture that, a pack of spearmint gum being marketed as discount therapy. Odd? Yes, but also delightfully human. By now you can feel the rhythm of your own body slowing down as these little details seep in. There's an invisible choreography at play. The fan hums, your heart steadies, your mind half smiles at the absurdity of humans studying yawns. If relaxation had a scent, it would probably smell like lavender mixed with old library books, the kind of smell that tells you nothing urgent is left to do tonight. And so you keep floating, one sleepy fact at a time, half in the science, half in the metaphor, already softened by the psychology of rest itself. You feel the rise and fall of your chest as if your body has its own tide. In and out, in and out. It's not something you command, yet the rhythm keeps you alive, keeps you balanced. Tonight, that simple act of breathing is your bridge. Psychology loves to remind us that the breath is more than air. It's a control panel for the nervous system. Slow inhales activate just enough of your sympathetic system to stay awake, while longer exhales invite the parasympathetic rest mode to wash over you. That's why sighing feels so good. It's basically your body pressing the reset button without consulting you first. Here's a curious fact. When you deliberately breathe slowly, around 6 breaths per minute, your heart rate and blood pressure actually sync in harmony. Scientists call this cardiorespiratory coherence, but you can think of it as your organs vibing to the same playlist. It's one of the rare times your biology acts like a jazz band, steady, smooth, improvising together. And speaking of rhythms, you might find it soothing to know that your brain waves change with your breath. Inhaling briefly nudges alertness, while exhaling calms activity. You could say your lungs are DJing your brain, remixing your mental states one breath at a time. Another fact worth tucking under your pillow: when you breathe through your nose rather than your mouth, you release nitric oxide, a tiny molecule that helps blood flow more easily. That means nasal breathing isn't just quieter, it's literally more efficient for your entire body. It's the biological equivalent of choosing the express lane at the grocery store. Now, for something gently odd, certain monks in the Himalayas practice a breathing ritual called tummo, where they generate heat in their bodies through breath control. Some can sit in snow, wearing nothing but thin cloth and still radiate warmth. Western researchers scratch their heads over this, half awed and half frozen, but it shows how deeply breath can influence physiology. Historians, of course, argue over whether ancient breathing practices, yoga's pranayama, Chinese qigong, even medieval Christian breath prayers, were all connected or just parallel discoveries. Some say humans stumbled onto the calming effects of breath separately across cultures. Others claim there was a secret web of exchange, ideas passed along the Silk Road with spices and silks. No one agrees, which is exactly how historians prefer it. Meanwhile, psychologists studying modern stress found something simple but fascinating. Even imagining slow breathing, just picturing the expansion of your lungs in detail, can relax your nervous system. Your brain sometimes can't tell the difference between real and vividly imagined acts. That means the movie in your mind might be as powerful as the air in your lungs. Here's one last quirk for tonight. People who practice slow breathing often report a greater sense of time stretching, as if moments last longer. That may be why meditation feels timeless. It isn't that the clock changes, but your perception does. In other words, breathing is your time machine. No DeLorean required. You notice now that your shoulders have loosened without you realizing it. Your jaw unclenches, your thoughts quiet down, and your body feels heavier against the bed. You might even laugh a little at the idea that you're a walking symphony of air, bones, and timing. A strange band, yes, but one that knows how to lull itself towards sleep if you let it. And so the tide keeps flowing, breath in, breath out, a gentle bridge carrying you deeper into this drifting story. You're lying there, the room dim, the fan still humming, and suddenly your mind begins replaying bits and pieces of the day. That awkward laugh you gave at lunch, the email you never finished, the lyric from a song you only half remember. It feels random, but psychology insists there's a method behind this late-night madness. Memory, especially at night, doesn't just file things away, it reorganizes them. reshaping raw experiences into something smoother, almost dreamlike. One fact that comforts you: during sleep, the hippocampus, that seahorse shaped part of your brain, replays recent memories in fast bursts, almost like a speed run of your day. It's not just rehashing, it's deciding what sticks and what fades. Think of it as your personal editor, cutting boring scenes and spotlighting the ones that matter. Here's another truth: your brain actually strengthens connections between neurons when you dream, almost as if you're practicing for tomorrow. Athletes who imagine their performance before sleep often show measurable improvements the next day. It's like having a free rehearsal space in your head that charges no rent. Odd fact incoming: people sometimes experience what's called sleep learning, where playing certain sounds or phrases during sleep can subtly reinforce memory. It's not full-on Matrix-style I know kung fu training, but experiments have shown that smelling roses while learning new words, and then smelling roses again during sleep, helps recall. Apparently, the brain enjoys sensory Easter eggs. But here's where things get more layered. Memory isn't a perfect archive. Every time you recall something, you slightly rewrite it, influenced by your current mood and context. That means your cherished childhood story may not be exactly what happened. It's a living remix tuned to the emotional music of the moment. Psychologists call this reconsolidation, but you might call it the reason siblings argue over who actually spilled the juice 20 years ago. Historians still debate how far back humans have trusted memory. Ancient cultures often relied on oral storytelling to pass history, which inevitably shifted over generations. Was memory ever truly accurate? Some scholars argue that ancient people accepted memory's flaws as part of its beauty, while modern science obsesses over precision. The tug-of-war continues, and maybe it should. After all, a little fuzziness makes life softer around the edges. Now, a quirky, slightly edgy fact: your brain intentionally forgets things, a process called synaptic pruning. It literally clips connections that aren't useful, like trimming dead leaves off a plant. Without forgetting, we drown in useless detail, like the color of socks you wore 3 Tuesdays ago. So forgetting isn't failure, it's maintenance. Your mind is Marie Kondoing itself nightly, keeping only what sparks joy. Another sweet discovery: emotionally charged events are more likely to survive the editing process of memory. That's why you remember your first kiss, but not your 37th Tuesday commute. Your brain, sentimental as it is, loves a dramatic storyline. Here's something fun: when you replay a memory vividly enough, your brain sometimes confuses it with imagination. That's why nostalgia can feel so intoxicating. It's part real, part dream, part fantasy. You might think you're remembering the taste of your grandmother's soup, but you're also seasoning it with your current craving for comfort. As you let these ideas sink in, notice how your own memories tonight feel lighter, less jagged. They're not weapons of stress, just drifting fragments. The mind is sweeping its shelves, dusting off what's worth keeping, letting the rest fade into background static. You can almost hear the shuffle, like papers being filed in a quiet office long after everyone's gone home. And so, memory becomes a pillow, not a burden. It softens, reshapes, edits itself into stories that carry you gently into tomorrow. You drift a little deeper, and suddenly the world feels painted in shades you can almost taste. Colors sneak into your awareness, even behind closed eyelids, and psychology has a lot to say about how those shades nudge your mind into certain moods. Take blue, for instance. Studies show it lowers blood pressure and slows your pulse, which is why bedrooms painted in cool tones tend to feel more restful. Blue is like the chill friend who tells you to stop worrying about emails at midnight. Fact number 2: red, on the other hand, sparks alertness and even raises your heart rate slightly. That's why stop signs scream at you and why restaurants often use red to keep you stimulated. But here's the odd twist. In some cultures, red also represents luck and prosperity, so people find it comforting instead of stressful. A perfect reminder that color isn't universal. It's a conversation between biology and culture. Then there's green. Research suggests it reduces eye strain and gives your mind a sense of renewal, probably because it's tied to nature. Offices that add plants or just green decor see better mood scores among employees. Your brain, it turns out, thinks a potted fern is a productivity hack. Soft yellow deserves its own lullaby. Psychologists found that warm, muted yellows can lift mood and stimulate optimism, but only in moderation. Too much yellow, too bright, and the effect flips. It can irritate and overstimulate. Basically, yellow is like caffeine, perfect in small doses, a disaster if you chug the whole pot. Here's an unusual fact. People exposed to pink rooms, specifically a shade called Baker-Miller pink, showed temporarily reduced aggression and calmer behavior. For a while, prisons even painted cells this color. Whether it truly works long-term is still debated, but imagine a shade of bubblegum as a behavioral tool. It's strange but charming. Speaking of debates, scholars still argue about whether color preferences are rooted in evolution or shaped by environment. Some claim humans love blue because it signaled safe skies and clean water in ancestral times. Others argue we just like what we're used to seeing. No one's won the argument yet, which is why interior designers still make a fortune selling color psychology workshops. Another little gem, light, not just color, deeply shapes your circadian rhythm. Bright white or blue light tricks your brain into thinking it's daytime by suppressing melatonin, while softer amber light tells your body it's time to slow down. That's why scrolling TikTok in bed feels good but ruins your sleep. You're basically convincing your brain it's noon in Las Vegas. And here's a quirky, edgy finding. People in windowless offices often experience something called color hunger. Without exposure to natural daylight and its subtle shifts, they report craving bright hues in clothes, screens, or even snacks. It's as if your mind tries to compensate for missing sunshine with Skittles. Even blind individuals, fascinatingly, sometimes respond to light and color through non-visual pathways. Their bodies still sense circadian shifts, proving that light doesn't just pass through eyes, it taps into deeper systems, whispering to the body when to wake and when to rest. So as you lie here, notice the shadows, the softness of the dark, maybe a faint glow from your alarm clock or streetlight outside. Every shade around you, every flicker of light is part of an ancient psychological language your body speaks fluently, even when you're not paying attention. Tonight, the colors have already done their work. The blues and grays are lulling you. The dim amber glow is whispering, and even the absence of light feels like a weighted blanket for your mind. And with that, you drift further, carried along on a palette made not of paints but of quiet science. You're floating now, not quite awake, not quite asleep, and suddenly your mind begins sketching scenes on its own. A random person from high school appears in a supermarket made of clouds. A giant penguin drives a bus. You wake up laughing, or sometimes crying, at the sheer nonsense. Dreams, strange as they are one of psychology's most fascinating playgrounds. Fact number 1, your brain is incredibly active during dreams, especially in the REM stage of sleep. In fact, some regions are more active than when you're awake. It's as though your mind waits until the lights go out to throw the loudest party of the day. Here's another gem. During REM sleep, your muscles are paralyzed, so you don't act out your dreams. This safety feature is called rematonia. Without it, you'd probably be running into your nightstand, chasing that dream penguin. Your body, thankfully, locks you down like a parent saying, "Sit still, it's bedtime." Odd fact, Not everyone dreams in color. Roughly 12% of people regularly dream in black and white, a percentage that used to be higher when black and white TV was more common. That suggests media can actually shape the palette of our inner worlds. Imagine your mind updating its dream software depending on your screen time. Dreams also help with emotional regulation. Studies show that replaying stressful experiences in dreams, but with softer or surreal twists, can reduce their sting. It's like your brain runs a low budget therapy session overnight. You wake up feeling lighter, even if the dream itself made no sense. Now for something a little edgy. Recurrent nightmares can actually serve as warnings. Psychologists found that repeated stressful dreams sometimes precede health issues like anxiety disorders or trauma responses. In a way, your brain might be waving a red flag while you sleep, saying, hey, something needs attention here. Creepy, but potentially helpful. Historians still argue whether dreams were always seen as psychological tools or as divine messages. Ancient Egyptians believed dreams were portals to communication with the gods, while Greek philosophers like Aristotle leaned toward the idea that dreams were natural byproducts of the mind. The debate over whether they're mystical or mechanical hasn't fully died. Some people still read dream dictionaries, while others just blame the pizza they ate. Here's a quirky fact. Lucid dreaming, when you realize you're dreaming and sometimes control the plot, is surprisingly common. Roughly half of people have had at least one lucid dream, though only about 20% experience them frequently, and practicing reality checks while awake, like asking, am I dreaming, can increase the chances. If you're hearing this right before sleep, maybe tonight's your night to take flight. Another small treasure, people who keep dream journals often remember more dreams over time. The act of writing signals to the brain that dreams are important, so it brings them closer to consciousness. Your brain, it seems, loves attention, even from a sleepy notebook at 7 a.m. And here's one last fact for your pillow tonight. Dreams may be essential for creativity. Famous ideas from scientific breakthroughs to hit songs have allegedly arrived in dreams. The brain, left unsupervised, becomes a surrealist artist, blending memory, imagination, and nonsense into something new. So as you lay back, maybe a little smile curling at the thought of giant penguins or midnight cloud markets, remember, your dreams are not meaningless static. They're the strange poetry your brain whispers to itself, reorganizing, experimenting, even warning when it needs to. And while scholars and scientists debate the why, you simply get to enjoy the show. Already, the edges of tonight's dreams are sketching themselves, waiting for you to drift far enough to step inside. You curl a little deeper into the sheets, and suddenly the simple weight of the blanket feels like an embrace. Psychology has plenty to say about why this works. Touch, even the imagined kind, has a powerful way of calming your nervous system. A hug, a pat on the shoulder, even a soft stuffed animal, they all activate pressure receptors in your skin that signal safety to your brain. Your body translates these signals into lower cortisol levels and steadier heartbeats. In short, comfort isn't just emotional, it's physiological. Here's your first fun fact. Weighted blankets have been shown to reduce anxiety by applying gentle, even pressure across the body. Scientists call it deep pressure stimulation, but it's basically the grown-up version of swaddling a baby. Your nervous system says, oh, okay, we're safe now, and the mind follows. Another fact, when babies are held, their heart rate synchronizes with the person holding them. This effect lingers into adulthood. Studies show couples cuddling in bed can experience a surprising alignment of breathing patterns and heart rhythms. You could say snuggling is the body's Bluetooth connection. Odd fact alert, researchers once tested whether hugging inanimate objects could lower stress. Turns out, hugging a pillow or even a big plush toy can release oxytocin, the so-called cuddle hormone. It may not be as potent as hugging a person, but your brain is less picky than you think. A stuffed panda might be your part-time therapist. Now consider this. Touch deprivation, sometimes called skin hunger, can lead to higher stress, poor sleep, and even weakened immunity. It sounds dramatic, but humans are wired for connection, and without it, the body feels the absence like a missing nutrient. That's partly why weighted blankets, pets, and even body pillows are so comforting. They feed the nervous system what it craves. Historians still argue about when humans began using comfort objects. Some suggest ancient children clutched small figurines for reassurance, not unlike modern kids with teddy bears. Others argue that adults, too, leaned on amulets, blankets, or carved charms as psychological anchors. Whether it was a Roman child holding a clay doll or a Victorian adult gripping a rosary, the idea of touch as a shield spans cultures. Here's something quirky. Stroking a pet, even for just a few minutes, lowers both your blood pressure and the animal's. You and your cat might actually be co-regulating each other's stress levels. Your dog isn't just needy, it's a mutual therapy session with fur. Another fascinating fact, in clinical studies, massage therapy has been shown to increase serotonin and dopamine levels, neurotransmitters tied to happiness and relaxation. That explains why even a quick shoulder rub feels disproportionately amazing, like discovering a secret off switch in your back muscles. And an edgy twist, some psychologists warn that technology can mimic but never fully replace touch. Devices that simulate hugs or vibrations might provide temporary comfort, but they can't replicate the complex cocktail of hormones real touch releases. In other words, no app will ever quite match an actual hug. As you notice the blanket on you now, heavy or light, it's not just fabric, it's a conversation with your nervous system, telling it to slow down, release tension, and prepare for rest. You're wrapped not only in cotton or wool, but in the ancient psychology of safety. The simple act of touch, or its weighted substitute, becomes your shield against the restless corners of night. And so, cocooned in softness, you drift further into the story, comfort wrapped around you like a silent friend. The room is quiet, but your sense of time is not. You lie there counting minutes, and then suddenly the clock leaps forward. 5 minutes felt like an hour, or maybe an hour slipped past in the blink of a sigh. Psychology loves to remind you that time itself isn't fixed in the mind. It bends, stretches, and shrinks depending on your state. Tonight, with sleep pressing gently on your eyelids, time begins its slow dance. Here's your first fact. Fatigue changes your perception of time. When you're exhausted, your brain's internal clock ticks more slowly, making moments feel stretched out. That's why waiting for sleep can feel eternal, even if only 10 minutes pass. Your neurons are basically running the timekeeping app on low battery mode. Another truth, when you're deeply absorbed in something pleasant, reading, daydreaming, listening to calming sounds, time speeds up. Psychologists call this flow. You look up and wonder how it got so late. Ironically, the most restful states erase the very thing you try to measure. A slightly odd fact, experiments show that people tend to underestimate how long they've been resting in quiet darkness. In one study, participants thought they had napped for 15 minutes when in reality, they'd been out for over an hour. The brain, once disconnected from external cues, abandons the clock altogether. Now something quirkier. Your circadian rhythm doesn't perfectly match 24 hours. On average, it runs closer to 24.2 hours. This means your body is constantly resyncing itself to daylight. Without natural light, you'd slowly drift out of alignment, like a watch losing minutes each day. Historians argue about whether ancient people perceived time differently. Before mechanical clocks, time was often measured by natural cues: sunrise, shadows, or the crow of a rooster. Some scholars believe humans back then experienced time more fluidly, without the rigid structure of minutes and hours. Others argue that ritual calendars and farming schedules gave their lives as much structure as ours, just painted in different rhythms. The truth probably rests somewhere in between. As usual, here's a curious finding. When people are deprived of time cues, like in deep caves or sealed labs, they often adopt longer cycles of sleep and wakefulness, drifting toward that natural 24.2-hour clock. Left alone, your body would slowly redefine day on its own terms, a little rebellion against civilization. And here's something on the stranger side: emotions alter time perception dramatically. Fear and stress make moments feel longer, while joy makes them vanish. This isn't just metaphor, it's tied to how the brain's amygdala processes events. That terrifying second on a roller coaster really does stretch inside your head. Another charming fact: as people grow older, they often report time feeling faster. One theory suggests that as your brain processes familiar events more efficiently, they take up less mental bandwidth, making the days seem shorter. Childhood summers felt endless because everything was novel: every insect, every game, every smell of grass. Adulthood speeds by because your brain's already been there, done that, filed it under routine. So here you are tonight, lying in a room where minutes no longer behave properly. Time folds like origami, stretches like taffy, collapses like sand through fingers. The ticking clock is real, but your perception is the dream, bending to mood, fatigue, and rhythm. The longer you linger, the softer time becomes, until it no longer matters whether 5 minutes or 5 hours have passed. And so you drift in the slow dance of time itself, lulled not by the clock on the wall, but by the ancient rhythm of your own mind. You turn slightly in bed, maybe brushing against the pillow, and suddenly a thought passes about a friend, a conversation, someone you miss, someone you love. Psychology reminds you that even in the quiet of night, your mind is deeply social. Humans are wired to connect, even when alone in the dark. That whisper of memory, that longing for company, is part of why the brain feels calmer when it senses belonging. Here's your first fact: loneliness isn't just an emotion, it changes your body. Studies show that chronic loneliness raises stress hormones, disrupts sleep, and even weakens immunity. It's as if your body interprets isolation as danger, keeping you half alert, unwilling to fully rest. Now, the gentler flip side: feeling socially connected, even just remembering a loved one, triggers oxytocin release. That chemical cocktail lowers stress and encourages relaxation. It doesn't take physical presence. Sometimes a photo, a memory, or a mental image of a smile is enough to coax your nervous system toward calm. Here's something odd but fascinating: your brain actually has a dedicated social default mode. When you're not focused on a task, your mind naturally drifts to thoughts of people, relationships, and interactions. This explains why, as you try to fall asleep, you replay conversations or imagine hypothetical ones. It's your brain's version of idle mode, and it loves company. Another fun fact: laughter in groups doesn't just spread, it syncs heart rates and breathing among participants. Shared laughter is basically a physiological glue, leaving you calmer and more at ease. That's why remembering a funny moment with friends often makes you smile even in solitude. It's a leftover echo of that synchronization. Now for the quirky twist: even parasocial relationships, connections with fictional characters, YouTubers, or celebrities, can reduce loneliness. Your brain doesn't always distinguish between real and imagined bonds. That's partly why watching your favorite show before bed can feel comforting, like inviting familiar friends into your room. Historians debate whether ancient humans slept more communally than we do now. Some argue that in villages and camps, sleeping close together offered safety and warmth, reinforcing bonds. Others suggest that solitude at night was equally common, with people taking shifts or finding privacy. What's certain is that the rhythms of social connection shaped rest just as much then as they do now. Here's a slightly edgy fact: texting or scrolling social media right before bed can backfire. While it provides a sense of connection, the blue light delays melatonin, and the constant stimulation can increase anxiety. Your brain is tricked into staying awake while pretending it's relaxing. It's like ordering decaf coffee and then wondering why you're jittery. But there's good news too. Even a short, affectionate interaction before sleep, whether a hug, a quick call, or a warm thought, has measurable effects. People who feel loved right before bed report falling asleep faster and waking up less during the night. Affection, it seems, is its own kind of lullaby. And here's a playful final fact: when couples sleep next to each other, their micro movements often synchronize, even if they're unaware of it. Breathing, tossing, stretching, their bodies echo each other in tiny, unconscious rhythms. It's as though the body whispers, "Don't worry, I'm here too." So tonight, even if you're alone in the room, you're not truly alone. Your mind carries connections like constellations, glowing quietly in the dark. They steady your heart, soften your breathing, and remind you that comfort often lives in the invisible threads between people. Wrapped in those unseen bonds, you drift a little further into rest. Your eyes grow heavier, and with them, your mind begins to wander, not into sharp memories or logical thoughts, but into little lanterns of imagination that flicker and float in the dark. Psychology calls this mind wandering, and while it sometimes gets you scolded in meetings, at night it becomes your quiet ticket to peace. First fact: daydreaming activates the brain's default mode network, the system that kicks in when you're not focused on tasks. Instead of idling, your brain actually lights up in intricate patterns, connecting distant ideas. That's why wandering thoughts often lead to sudden insights. Your imagination is basically a creative backstage crew working overtime while you're staring at the ceiling. Another comforting truth: mind wandering improves emotional regulation. Studies suggest that allowing yourself to drift into fantasy or soft imagination helps reduce stress by giving your brain a rehearsal space. You're not escaping reality, you're stretching it, softening its edges until it feels manageable. Here's a fun oddity: research shows that bored people are often more creative than highly entertained ones. Boredom nudges your brain into generating ideas like an itch to fill the empty space. That's why some of your most random and brilliant thoughts arrive in the shower or right before sleep. Now for something quirkier: imagining scenarios, even absurd ones, can trigger real emotional responses. If you picture a joyful reunion, your body may release oxytocin. If you imagine standing on a cliff, your pulse may quicken. Your brain, ever gullible, often reacts to imagination as though it were real. In this way, your mind is both the painter and the gallery, hosting its own exhibits at midnight. Historians debate whether ancient myths were born partly from collective daydreams. Some argue that stories of gods, heroes, and monsters were shaped by the wandering minds of early humans staring into firelight. Were myths just cultural imagination sessions, or were they anchored in rituals and rules, crafted more deliberately? The debate, as usual, continues, but one thing's clear: imagination has always been humanity's nighttime companion. Here's a slightly edgy fact: some psychologists argue that too much structured focus, rigid schedules, constant stimulation can stunt imagination. In contrast, moments of unstructured drifting are fertile ground for problem solving. It's a reminder that staring into space isn't laziness, it's maintenance. You're tuning your brain like an instrument. Another curious nugget: creative people often report more vivid dreams and stronger recall of imaginative states. Some even keep idea journals by the bed to capture the strange gems that arrive between wakefulness and sleep. The half dream zone, called hypnagogia, has been linked to bursts of invention. Famous thinkers like Edison and Dali even used it intentionally. And here's one more: imagining calming scenes before sleep, like floating on a lake or walking through a quiet forest, has been shown to reduce insomnia. Guided imagery works because the brain, again, believes in its own lanterns. What you picture softly becomes what you feel. So tonight, as your thoughts meander, let them picture fireflies hovering above a meadow, or neon signs glowing on a rainy street, or whatever stray image makes you smile. Each wandering thought is a lantern, lighting a path deeper into rest. No need to steer them, they know the way better than you do. And with that, your drifting imagination becomes not a distraction, but a lullaby, carrying you further into the hush. The air feels cooler now, or maybe it's just your mind settling into stillness. You've drifted through relaxation, breath, memory, colors, dreams, touch, time, connection, and imagination. And now, in the final stretch, psychology leads you towards something bigger: those moments of awe that make you feel both small and infinite at the same time. Call it cosmic stillness. Here's the first fact: research shows that experiencing awe, whether from stargazing or hearing a powerful piece of music, actually slows your perception of time. People report feeling more present, less rushed, and more connected to the world around them. Awe is, in essence, a natural sedative for the restless mind. Another truth: awe can reduce stress by lowering inflammation markers in the body. Scientists still aren't sure why, but some think it's because awe shifts focus outward, away from ego and personal worries. You can't obsess over your inbox when you're marveling at the Milky Way. Now for a curious one: people who regularly experience awe often score higher in measures of life satisfaction. It doesn't take a trip to the Grand Canyon. Sometimes just noticing the pattern of frost on a window or the swirl of cream in your coffee can spark that miniature sense of wonder. Your brain doesn't grade awe on size. An odd and slightly edgy fact: astronauts frequently report something called the overview effect. Seeing Earth from space overwhelms them with a sense of unity and fragility, often shifting their entire outlook on life. Psychologists study this intensely, wondering if awe might be the closest thing to a universal therapy. Imagine needing only a window seat on the International Space Station to find inner peace. Historians still argue about whether awe was always tied to religion. Ancient temples and cathedrals were deliberately designed to overwhelm the senses with vast ceilings, glowing windows, and echoing acoustics. Was that awe meant to point toward the divine, or was it simply a way to influence psychology before psychology had a name? The debate continues, wrapped in stained glass and stone. Here's something charming: awe tends to make people kinder. Studies show that after awe-inspiring experiences, individuals are more likely to help strangers, share resources, and show generosity. Feeling small in the grand scheme doesn't diminish you, it makes you gentler, more connected. Another fascinating detail: awe often increases creativity. By shaking up the boundaries of what you think you know, it forces your brain to look at problems differently. Think of it as the mind's version of standing on a mountaintop. The view shifts, and so do the possibilities. And here's one last psychological treasure: awe may improve sleep. When you feel connected to something larger, your worries shrink in proportion. Stress dissolves, breathing deepens, and the body readies itself for rest. that cosmic stillness becomes your final pillow. So tonight, imagine the vastness above you, the galaxies spiraling, the stars burning with quiet fire, the universe stretching endlessly outward. Feel the humility and comfort in knowing you're part of that great expanse, a tiny flicker with a front row seat to infinity. It doesn't make you smaller, it makes you timeless. You breathe in, you breathe out, and for a moment, the mind is utterly still. And now we come to the end of this nighttime journey. The facts have become softer, the edges blurrier, until they no longer feel like lessons but whispers. You've wandered through the science of calm, touched the threads of connection, drifted in imagination, and finally arrived at the quiet awe that holds the world together. Notice how your body feels now, heavy, safe, cocooned in quiet rhythm. Notice how your thoughts no longer rush, but stroll lazily, as if they too are ready for rest. Time is wide, breath is slow, and memory hums like a gentle song. You've reached the stillness where science becomes poetry, where psychology merges with dreams, where the universe outside mirrors the calm within. Tonight, there is nothing left to do, no list to chase, no clock to obey, just the slow exhale of the world and the soft inhale of your own being. If you close your eyes now, you'll carry with you the warmth of blankets, the rhythm of breath, the colors of calm, the stories of dreams, the weight of comfort, the dance of time, the glow of connection, the lanterns of imagination, and finally, the vast embrace of cosmic wonder. And with that, your journey is complete. Drift gently, rest fully, and let the science of the mind become the lullaby of your night.